Good morning.
Can you state for me your name, sir?
My name is John Bennett.
And what is your length of time here in Mississippi, in Tibbee?
In and around Tibbee, I've spent my entire life here, so that totals about 77 years.
And what was it like growing up here?
Growing up in Tibbee was an enjoyable experience, simply because Tibbee represents a different kind of community. Tibbee, I suppose, a lot of the mystique that we associate with this community somehow is related to its history. And the history growing out of the community itself then is infiltrated into individuals who come up through the community. And as a result, they have a different outlook on life.
Okay. And how does religion play a part in that?
Well, religion became the focus for all community life in the Tibbee community. When the people left the confines of the individual families, then they assembled themselves around the activities that took place in the church. And all of the kinds of things that were important to the community grew out of, or at least took place within the church or through the church. So religion itself, the holy beliefs that people have associated with the church and with religion then served as a foundation for the people to build the kind of life that they wanted to for themselves and their children.
What is one of your earliest memories as an example of how the church communicated to the congregation?
Well, when I first came into the church here, then we had a teacher who taught the real small children, Mrs. Ida Danzy, and she was able to relate all kinds of things that we had experienced as small children within the confines of our various homes and the activities throughout the community. And she was able to gel us or weld us into a group of individuals that saw the other individuals as being important to what we wanted to do in our lives in the future.
What are some things that the church can do today to build on that foundation?
Well, today the church has less influence, I believe, in the community simply because the people in the community have many other kinds of things to get engaged in, to become interested in, and to seek out in order to influence what they want to do. So for that reason, then, I think the church is not as powerful or influential in the lives of people in the community as it once was. Now, I suppose that the church's influence also is related to how it behaves within itself. Now, as a young fellow growing up in this community, then even though I was small, then I was fully aware of the conflicts that were going on in the community, fully aware of conflicts going on in the church. And I think right now then, in this age of communication, that people seem to take the position that because children are young, they don't know what's going on, and the church is losing its influence because the younger children are losing respect for the people who are older in the various capacities within the church and within the community. So today I think then that one thing could happen for the church then that it can come up with a better conflict resolution within the community. And when conflicts should arise in the community, that the church itself not necessarily go out to become actively involved in the community and to take control of it seems to me that the role of the church would be to draw the individuals into the church and provide for the spiritual needs of the individuals who come and not force itself on others. And I think that's part of the role that the church could play, and maybe not playing as well now as it could.
Could you give it, for example?
Well, I wouldn't want to get too far into it because I don't know the full details, since I'm no longer actively involved in churches in this community. But there seems to be a tremendous amount of conflict within the churches that have spilled over into community organizations. And these organizations have taken sides, and then when you do that, then it spills over to the adults in the community, and therefore spills into the younger adults and the children in the community. So I think then at the church right now, then it can go back and take a look at its role and redefine itself and rededicate itself to doing what a church should do, and leave some of these other things up to other organizations, because at one time we only had one organization in the community, and that was the church. And there are other organizations, and they need to find their roles, and those things that have nothing to do with religion and spirituality should be stripped away from the church and left to these community organizations.
What do you think are some keys to getting that message and the message of Tibbee out to a greater community?
The key is to, I suppose, attract the attention and get the commitment from the people who are involved, the most people who are most influential in the community, and set the tone for what takes place in the community. And then maybe the community can rally around the clear directions that it produced, and then we don't get so involved in following many of the so-called false prophets, people who seem to think then that they have the answer to what the community is about, what it should be doing, and how it should be accomplished. And then once you find that individuals, then the people need to rally around and support that person as the leader of the church or the spiritual aspect of the community, and keep it clear and distinct from what is happening in other organizations in the community.
And you asked or talked about all of those ways of the church showing love. How is love demonstrated in your religious life today?
Well, the love then, in order to demonstrate love, then it has to be demonstrated in the other individuals that you have contact with and that you know, and that you establish a relationship where you give them the opportunity to be that individual that they want to be, and then give them the necessary support in order to achieve the things that they would like to achieve as individuals and as groups.
Last question. What do you want people to know about Tibbee?
Well, I would think that it's important to sometime go back and take a look at the history of Tibbee. Tibbee is a unique community, unlike any other one in this area, and probably in any area of the state of Mississippi. And the fact that Tibbee is located here between the two creeks. And essentially Tibbee is just a little sandbar that's located here. Black people ended up with owning property and owning Tibbee basically simply because then the land was too poor to produce anything. So white farmers had no need or desire for it, so they sold it to black folks, and that's how you ended up with it. Tibbee also happened to be located just adjacent to some of the larger farming areas that's in the area. So the individuals who were working as sharecroppers, say for instance over in Lowndes County or in other parts of Clay County, then they became disillusioned with being sharecroppers and wanted to own something of their own, and they moved to Tibbee. And that's how you had people start moving from Lowndes County. My grandparents, both parents came from Lowndes County. They grew up in over in areas that were owned by white farmers, and they wanted to become independent. They wanted to do something for themselves, and so both my grandparents bought a piece of property together and split it down the middle, and so that's how we happen to live here in Tibbee. There's a 55-acre plot down there, and John Weber and Ben Bennett bought it together and split it down the middle. And that's how I happen to be raised in Tibbee, born and raised in Tibbee.
And what were some of your memories of growing up on that farm, or did you guys do a lot of farming?
We tried. The land, as I had indicated earlier, this land here is too poor to raise a crop. But you have to remember that even when my great-grandparents were working as sharecroppers, then they were existing at the survival level at that time. So when they came over and purchased property here in Columbus, then that property was not, the ground was not fertile enough in order to get a living. So they continued to live at a survival level, and they took great pride in the fact that they owned it themselves, and they were already just barely surviving on the plantations. So they were happy to be here. And that kind of independence then was passed on from generation to generations, and that's the reason why people in Tibbee seem to have a different attitude about life than some of the other communities that are located around us.
Now, when your parents came over, was the church already here at that time, or do you remember when they started talking?
Well, I understand now that there was a church in this community now. Before they actually purchased land in the community here, then I don't know of, I've not heard of any people who were living in this community at that time. But I do understand that this church right here, then, it was once located somewhere up there, up the road up there, probably near where your dad lives, somewhere up in that area, before it moved here. But this church here this property here was purchased somewhere around 1900, somewhere in that area. And these churches, this church was built here, and as well as the one across the street.
Well, this concludes all the formal questions. Is there anything else you would like to add or expand on?
Not particular. You said you'd get back sometime to talk about education.
I was tempted to go in there, but we'll focus on the music.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Bennett, for your time.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
I wanted to go into the education.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll get to that though.
All right.
Because I think great-granddad or somebody they used to teach school way down there, and then his father and stuff taught and all those kind of things. So, and then he's a teacher, so it kind of creates generation after generation of teachers, which is lucky for us.
Right.
We grew up with that, but
Environment.
it's kind of interesting to see how it just kind of evolved, and because we couldn't farm the land, we gravitated into something else, but we still found a way to be successful.
But I never knew why they call it the sand.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So I got some research to do.
Yeah.
All right, ready to throw a dog.
All right, then. Ask everyone to be quiet on set, and it's up to you, Corky. Let's go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your names for me.
I'm Bernice Williams.
And I'm Cecil Williams.
And what is your length of time here in Tibbee, Bernice?
I grew up here for like 30 years, and then I moved away to Atlanta, Georgia, and returned over a year ago, about a year. I've been here back home about a year.
Okay. And you, Cecil?
Well, it's been 17 years marriage, going on 18 years. So in between that time span. But living here permanently been a year.
Now, how is religion in this community relevant in your life, Bernice?
Very relevant in the fact that as children we were made to attend Sunday school, and from that church grew up pretty much in a religious environment as per se religion goes. Sunday school teacher, I was influenced a lot by Miss Grace, Teresa Grace. She was my Sunday school teacher, and learned a lot. Thought I did anyway as a child, and as I grew, I kind of strayed away some from it as a teenager and up into early adulthood. But still, the foundation of knowing that God exists and that we were His children, that was still embedded. So as I moved away to Atlanta and started attending church and started going to Bible school, then a lot of what was embedded kind of surfaced, and found out that a lot of things that I was taught wasn't really what I thought it was. So it's still a growing and a learning process for me, but I think religion in this community has played a very important role in just about everybody's life.
And so from your perspective, in terms of how you would contrast growing up in the home environment that you did in your community, and contrast that to your experience here in Tibbee with respect to religion.
Okay. My wife said very relevant because we was brought up in the church. I was brought up as being the assistant superintendent at our church. So we stayed in church. My mama and father stressed that. My dad was a preacher also. So we was in church constantly. And I think, that played a part in my life as I grew up, and taught me how to treat people, how to treat my wife, how to carry myself as a man. So it helped me as I grew older, and as I left home. And I attended a church in Georgia, which was a larger church on a larger scale, which was a television ministry in Jonesboro. And so that took us to another level in the ministry. And that allowed us to bring that back here in us to share with the people in the community.
And how has your transition been from that rearing to your experience here in this?
From my home? Well, it's about the same, because Selma we came from a small church down there. So the transition wasn't much different as it was down there as it is here.
And Bernice, what is your earliest memories of growing up here in the church? You talked about a little bit in terms of coming up in the classroom, but what are some other memories that stick out with you?
I vaguely remember when this church wasn't here, the church that was the white church that was here, a wooden church. And I remember as a child looking out the window when I was supposed to be paying attention to the pulpit. My direction should have been there, but looking out the window, and the picnics that they used to have a long time ago. They used to get up, I remember my mom preparing the boxes, as they call it, for homecoming or not family reunions, but homecoming or whatever. Or if on that Sunday they were gonna eat at the church, I remember her preparing the boxes, lunches or whatever, and the children playing under the trees as the parents prepared the food. And it was just seemed like the community, I guess because I was younger, it seemed like it was just so many people. Seemed like it was so many children running around until it was, I guess, years before I realized that we were a small community. I thought that we were heavily populated as a child until I started to venture out and get older. Then I realized that our community is basically small, but it seemed like we were doing big things, although we were small.
Mm-hmm. And Cecil, what was your first impression of Mount Pisgah or the church here in Tibbee?
When I first got here, very, very impressed because of what Tibbee had went through as a church. We heard about things that had went on here and the progress that had been made afterward. And now it seems to be on the right road. I was just very, when I first got here, very impressed with the community, with the people that are living in the community, like teachers and superintendents and as such, as your dad. And just very impressed that there was a ball field here and black people was, the owner of it. And I was very impressed with what was going on here in the community.
Okay. And I'll stick with you on this one. What are some things that the church can do today to grow?
I think it's left up to us. And that's our, I don't say religion because I'm not religion, I'm a Christian. And what we need to do is go out to our community, to these people. And that's part of our ministry, is to go out to these lost souls and minister unto them and tell them about the goodness and the love of Jesus Christ.
Maurice?
Pretty much the same thing he was saying. We are Christians. We truly believe in the Word of God from the beginning to the end. And I think if we kind of move away from tradition is good, it has its place. I truly believe that as a foundation, learning point, I'd say, and just stick to the Word, get into the Bible and actually know what God says about things, what He expects of us as Christians, and just do it. It's not, He didn't ask us to agree with it. He actually didn't even ask us to understand it up until a certain point. But obedience, I think, to the Word, and then let God be God. I think too many times we as people try to be God and analyze what He says to the point of trying to believe it, and then after believing it, then we have to analyze it enough to try to accept it. And if you don't accept it, then you can't do it. You can even believe it because it's there, but if you accept it, it's just like you don't believe it. So I think we do need to get out and show, we need to do just as good a job as I say the world is doing. And showing our young people that the best fun you can have is being a Christian. It's just not what you do, it's how you do a thing. And so we need the world has done a very good job of telling the truth, and we as Christians has done a very poor job of showing what Christianity is all about. And we are improving. Since I've been back home, the young people here I'm working with, and they're excited for the Lord, and that's a good thing. Excited in a sense different from when I was their age. I was basically forced to come to church. That was just what you did. And not really having a purpose a lot of times for actually being in church, other than the fact your parents made you go. But the children that I'm working with here now in the community, the teenagers, they seem to have a purpose for wanting to come. And I think that's a great, it's been a great motivational force for them, because they, a lot of times I think, beat their parents getting dressed to come to church, or asking them, what's taking so long, we're gonna be late. I've heard many of them say that. So I think that's really shows some growth as far as how we came up and why we came to church compared to the reason why they come now.
Okay. Cecil, would you add anything to that?
Like Bernie said, that is our future, which is the young kids, and definitely that's the enemy's focus is on our young kids, because he wants to stop the growth of the ministry, and that do start with our young kids, and they do have a hunger for the Word. They do have a hunger.
If you look at your religious life, how do you demonstrate love? You've expounded on it a little bit in terms of your work with the kids. Is there anything else you want to say in terms of how you demonstrate that love through your religious practice?
Well, first of all, I basically had to learn the true meaning of loving God. And I know I haven't arrived to a point where I say, well, okay, I love him, and that's it. I know it is an ongoing, growing process, but because of the love that I have for God, then I'm able to love myself. And from loving myself, I can love people. I don't have to agree with you to love you. At one time, I guess I probably, like most folks, if you do what I think you should do, then you know I love you. So my love has become more unconditional for mankind as a whole because of the love that God has for us. So I think everything starts with love. I posed an interesting question to my Sunday school class a couple of weeks ago, and the Holy Spirit kind of put it on my heart to ask them a question of the 10 commandments. And I know he said in his word that if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And a lot of them kind of, even including myself, I don't really study that a lot. There are a couple of things in there like thou shalt not kill, you know, that sticks out, thou shalt not steal. But there are other things in there too. And the most important part of the commandments was love. So I think the lack of keeping his commandments has a lot to do with the fact that we don't genuinely have the true agape or God-like love that we should have. If we have that, then it makes it more of a relationship that we should have with God. And then in having that relationship with him and having love, then it makes us keep those other commandments. And so we're kind of doing a study on that along with our regular lesson on the 10 commandments, what they mean, and how do we apply them to everyday life. My thing with my children is never read anything out of the Bible that you can't make become yours right now. And I think that's what it's about, making it become alive in our lives. So we'll know how to live day to day. It becomes our lifestyle.
Cecil?
It started with him, and him meaning Jesus Christ. He is love. And that made it easy for me, because if he loved me that much to go to the cross and die for me, to bring me back, to redeem me back to him, that's awesome. So it was easy for me to go to love you, to love others, because he is love. And I think that, like my wife said, that's the focus point. That's what God wants us to do, and that's share that love that he shared in the community and everywhere that we go.
And Cecil, I'll follow with you in terms of what do you want people to know about Tibbee?
I would say I would like people to know about Tibbee is that starting from the church, that the church went out, which we is the focal point of the whole community, that we went out all over, not just Tibbee, but everywhere we went, and we spreaded that love. And people because we spreaded that love, has come to that love because of what we're spreading, to hear the word. And they're curious of what that we're spreading, the word that's coming from the community and from our church.
That people can see the God.
They can see the God, yes.
Bernice, I'll finish with you.
Tibbee is very unique, as was stated earlier, in the fact that we don't have a lot of things that's missing. Although there are some pieces, of course, that could go into the puzzle in the scheme of things. But as a whole, me returning to Tibbee after many years, or 18 years of living in a larger city, I'm happy, and I guess a lot of people can't really understand that. Even some of my friends that I have back in Georgia, they were really shocked and surprised to know that we could come back home, as we're not old people, although we are getting closer, but the age we are and be content and happy in doing so. And it's simply because when I was here, I wasn't so unhappy. That wasn't the reason why I originally left. It wasn't anything that I hated about home that drew me someplace else. So returning wasn't hard for me. Tibbee, I'm thinking, or not so much as thinking, but the vision that I have for Tibbee is somewhat like a beacon light that will draw other people, not necessarily to live into the community, but to make where they're living better. We want to be able to, I see Tibbee as setting a standard for a lot of the communities in the surrounding areas, then cities and so on, simply because of the word. The word is definitely being released here. Our pastor is an excellent teacher. He's coming out of the word. He didn't write it, I didn't write it, it's there. So he said if we lift him up, and that's what we're doing here in Tibbee. We have grown tremendously from the time that I was a little girl attending church here to the time to my return. Tibbee is really on a different level as far as Christianity goes. Your religion, I think, can be anything. But as far as Christianity goes, I feel that we are really, we have grown and we are continuing to grow. I would like to see Tibbee as a whole come together and worship together. We do so many other things in the community together because we're basically family oriented. Even the people that have moved into the community probably married someone into the community or related to someone that lives here and that drew them here. So I would like, my goal or my ultimate vision for Tibbee is to see all of the people come together and worship God together in one house. We are still very much segregated within our community on a Sunday, and I would like to see us come together on a Sunday. We pretty much sometimes force everything else, but we're not forcing each other to worship together as a whole. I'm not Baptist, I'm not Methodist. I'm a Christian that just so happens to belong to a Baptist church. And I would love to see us come together as one.
Is there anything else that either one of you would like to add?
That's basically it. I think what you all are doing is a great thing. History, you know, and maybe it should have been done earlier. And that would give, I guess, would have given us some more insight on just how important and just how special Tibbee is from the beginning up until now.
Thank you both for your time. And it's a wrap.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Something that you can fill out, but it's still pretty extensive, and you have to be like a 50, they encourage you to be like a 503C. 501(c).
Well, I either write it through the development club, they're very supportive, and they are 501(c)(3).
Right.
And try to put systems in place to help with things like that, so. We got a mechanism in place.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely talk about this more.
All right.
All right, though.
What we're going to, Mr. Brooks, you know, you've been on camera before. Just relax, pay attention to him. Look at him, the camera is at an angle, and I'll be moving around as strictly as I can to get different angles of the shots. There ain't no question. Go ahead, Corky.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you kindly state your name, please?
Maurice Carr Brooks.
And what is your length of time here in Tibbee?
I moved to Tibbee when I was about 12 years old, so now I'm 58, and so do that.
And since we're talking about religion today, how is religion in this community relevant to you?
Religion in this community has always been relative, even from, the time of 12 years old, moving from another very religious community. It's just kind of a continuation of being involved in the church. my mother, Ethel Carr, and my dad, Charlie, very involved church people. We went to Sunday school every Sunday. We participated in worship services. We had all kinds of programs. And even back when I was 12 years old, we had a Children's Day program. So when my children grew up around the community, they were always curious because we would always have the Mother's Day program and the Father's Day program. They said, why are we having Children's Day the second Sunday? Why are we having the Children's Day program? But some things changed, and so we didn't celebrate that as much. But every program activity that would be, we were involved in it. And the church would be cold in the wintertime, and with that heater and that wood burning heater, and then in the summertime you would sweat and you'd burn up and you'd throw sweat off. And so church is just the number one priority, was always our family. I mean, church was it.
Okay. What are some of those, one of the fondest memories you have of growing up in the church?
It's always hilarious because we used to get so tickled in church, and I don't know what would make you laugh so, and you couldn't laugh. You weren't supposed to laugh in church, but we'd see something so funny, and it was like, it was 5 of us, my sister and the brothers, and really it was 1 brother and 3 other sisters, so it was like 4 of us pretty much together. And we'd look over at each other and see something that went on at church, whether it was Miss Carrie Lou's wig moving around on her head, or Miss Sally Weber shouting all over the place, or Miss Frankie Melton marching up and down the aisle shouting. And it was, as a child, we would get so tickled. And we'd just sit there and try to hold it, and we'd try to hold our hand over our mouth. But I mean, those were like joyous times. And then the times when, it was cold in the church, and we would try to have a Christmas program and be all decked out in our Christmas outfit and just freezing. But you remember those hard times. Now when you think about it, you're sitting in an all warm church in the wintertime and all cool in the summertime. Those times seem to have been so genuine and real, and now it's a little bit different. It's so much comfort that people take it for granted. The church used to be packed back when we were using that wood burning heater in Old Jones Chapel. And now, of course, the membership, the congregation, the attendance is so much smaller, and we got central air and central heat and nice padded seats, and so it's but the funnest memories of having those laughs at church.
Now, who would get it started?
It certainly wasn't me, because I was a coward. I knew Mother was going to tear me up, and I was always a coward. It usually was and she was my funny sister, and wasn't afraid of a spanking and stuff. So Az would kind of look over at Charlesine, then Charlesine would kind of look up at me, and then my brother would kind of nudge it on, and it was just funny. It was hilarious for us.
Now, you talked a little bit about the church and the types of things that it was doing. What can the church do now to grow?
We are having that same discussion at Jones Chapel. It always ends up after Sunday school or during Sunday school, because all the lessons are so relevant on leadership in the church, and how can we as members serve the church, the community, and we know young people are the key to any church, organizations, whatever. They are the key. So I think one of the things we can do is strategize and plan, first of all, and that's something it's hard for us to kind of do. We want to say we're going to do something, either we don't do it at all, or we get up and try to do it without making some preparation, plan, set objectives, goals, objectives for it, how we're going to evaluate, how often we're going to evaluate it. and I think we really got to just kind of strategize. How can you get more people, young adults involved in the church so that it would perpetuate and it would grow and keep that sense of community? Because I think church is one thing that keeps a sense of community in a community.
What are some ways that you think we can get that message out to some of those young kids?
Well, of course, one of the things that I've been trying to do is bring all the young people together in this community, whether they belong to the House of Refuge or St. Paul in West Point or Mount Pisgah or Jones Chapel or True Vine or any of the churches. If they live in this community, I want to try to do something to pull them together. We've tried like having on when we do have Senior Citizen Day, have the young people to go out and adopt a senior citizen to maybe read the Bible to them or rake their yards or do something and come to church with them on that fourth Sunday in October at 3 o'clock that rotates between the two churches, and sit with them and kind of let them, the elderly person serve as a mentor. But to get these young people involved in giving of themselves and learn how to appreciate someone else. And so I think if we can continue putting forth efforts, and as I said, make plans to get young people involved. And I mean, that's the best communication, because they are spread out in this Tibbee community now. It's not whether all the young people in this community belong to Mount Pisgah or Jones Chapel. And it's a reality of life, and when we know what the realities are, then we can deal with them and work with them.
Okay.
So getting them all involved here.
Since one of the things that we're trying to focus on is the importance of community love, how do you feel that love is demonstrated through your religious practice?
Well, we have the theme of the United Methodist Church is open hearts, open minds, open doors. So when you open your heart up to people and have your mind accepting of people and of different people, and when you have your doors open in a congregation, not just those words, but really mean what you're saying when you say those words, then people can come in. And that's how Jones Chapel tried to demonstrate it. We aren't always successful at it because some people don't have that personality to open hearts, open minds, and open doors. Because you're wide open. That's what it says, you're wide open. And some people are very closed. They're afraid, they're uncomfortable when people intrude on their territory or come into their hearts, because people do try to use things against you. So, but that's how we try to demonstrate it, the love for God and the love for our church and our community at Jones Chapel, United Methodist Church.
One final question. What would you like people to remember about this community, Tibbee?
Well, to remember that there are...
know about it, not necessarily remember, because it's not past, it's growing in present.
Yes. Well, to remember that there are people, there is a core group of people in this community. And I think it will always be that core group that love this community so much that they are willing to open their minds and hearts and doors to anybody that comes in and welcome them in. In our church we try to do it, both of our churches we try to do it. In our Tibbee Development Club, we're trying to keep that organization going to be able to bring people in new people, whenever they come up in the community. So I want people to always know now and in the future and in the past that this is an open community, and we want people to be a part of it. We're not a secret society. We have a love of community, and we wanted to see it grow. And it's not going to grow if we keep it to ourselves, because we're all going to die. Like I say, I'm 50. Well, I always say I'm 50 a year ahead of time, but I'll be 58 in November, so 57, and I'm getting older, and I'm probably among the youngest people around, so we need to get people involved, and we really put forth some effort to try to do that. Doesn't always happen, but we're talking about ways how we can even do that better.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, we want people to come to Tibbee. We want them to know that we love them, and we want them to be a part of the community and feel very special when they come here, because we feel very special for living in and around this community.
Well, thank you, Ms. Brooks, for your time.
You're welcome. Hey, guys, hey.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Hey, Annie. All right. People, but then to get enough of a variety of people from different aspects to talk about it and why it's special to them, and kind of what led them to their endeavors in terms of using this as a foundation and a springboard for other things that they've done in life, and how, the values, I guess, they got here help carry them on, and how they spread that in their individual communities that they go out.
Because I was thinking of Mother, she's one of the oldest
It would be great to get her maybe to
members
come down.
in this community, or who came from this community. Because I'm like fourth generation for Tibbee. So my great-grandfather was in Tibbee.
Okay.
And she could tell you more about that than I could.
And that, we definitely want to get her at some point when you want to do it, just let me know or let us know. We'll, try to schedule some time to come home on the weekend.
Okay.
To catch her on film.
Okay, because like I said, she'll be 91 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know her time span.
Yeah.
God has been good to her so far, but if you want to have documentary
Mm-hmm.
on the seniors that was here from
Let's
kids,
definitely try to do it.
it would
do
be,
soon.
you'd have to try and get her in before too long, because we don't know what her lifespan's going to be now.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you put your contact information down, we'll call you.
I did. I
Try.
left my name and my email
Okay. We'll just
address.
definitely set up a time soon to try to do that, because we originally started out trying to go to all of the elders of the community. We sat down with Mr. Kidd, we sat down with Ms. Billups, and we talked to them about a variety of things, including religion, racism, and all those kind of things. So we were heading down that road, but then it was like, well, we got too much, and then you really don't get a variety of people, because just trying to do those one-off interviews was time consuming for us to come back and do the editing. So we saw this as an opportunity to try to get everybody, but we still want to talk with some of those folks as soon as we can. So I'll definitely call you on that. All right.
All right, then, like I said, just relax, talk to him. I'll be moving around periodically, try to do the street as I can. And it's up to you, Corky. Let's go.
Good afternoon. Can you kindly state your name, please?
My name is Frances G. Powers.
And what is your length of time here in Tibbee?
I was originally born here in Tibbee, but my parents took me away when I was about a year and a half, 2 years old. And I came down every summer to visit my grandmother when she was living, who was Eugene Harris. Henry Harris was my grandfather. And I came back here 3 years ago to take care of my mother, who is originally from Tibbee also.
Since we're talking today about religion, how is religion in this community relevant, or how do you see it as being relevant?
I think it's very relevant in this community because I didn't grow up in this area. I always heard my mother talk about what it was like, and we came from a very religious family. Our background, as far back as I can remember her telling me, has always been grandfathers and grandmothers working in the church. And I think that in any community, you need to have that core, which is usually a church. And the church in Tibbee was a place where you met with your friends and you saw your neighbors every week. And according to my mother, revivals was something that they looked forward to get that spiritual feeding that they needed. And so I think the church is just something that we really need to keep that core, a place to go to for safety, a place to go to for spiritual feeding. And to have a pastor or a shepherd in any of the churches that can lead the people and tell the people the things that are needed to continue to survive and to progress in this world as times are now.
Through your mother, what were some of the earliest memories of the church? You talked a little bit about it, but what are some others that you remember?
Well, she always said that my grandfather was very active in the church. He was a deacon or one of the men that ran the church, so he was always active. And my mother said that she always went to Sunday school, and this was the original church. My great-grandfather was a member here, so he took his children, and my mother's mother took them, and so our family has always been in this church, and it's been a part of our church and working in the church. Since I've been here, I've found it to be a place that I enjoy going. I look forward to coming to church. I look forward to hearing the message for the day. And with me being a newcomer and not really knowing anyone that was my age, I found that coming here has been a warm reception for me. I enjoy that because you can go to many churches and they're not very friendly to you if you're an outsider. And I don't feel like I'm an outsider, even though I wasn't raised here. I've been accepted and accepted warmly. So that was real important to me when I came down here.
Now, you mentioned a lot of things in terms of that rich history. What can the church do now to grow?
I think that having a church that offers different programs that would affect everyone in the church, programs for the children, allowing the children to become more involved, junior church teaching them what the rules of the church is, what you can do and what you can't do, the right way to do it, because that's our future. And they need to be raised in a way like we were. This is acceptable in the church. This is what you do in the church. This is not acceptable in the church, and you don't do those things. I think something too that would be very helpful in the community, young people are always getting married. I think that marriage counseling is very important. I didn't have it. And I think that if you get a good, solid basis for marriage counseling for the young people that are coming up to get married I think that would be real important in survival of a marriage. you don't know. You get into marriage and you don't know. And you think it's all so wonderful, but there's a lot of stumbling blocks and things that you probably could work out if you knew the Christian background of a marriage. You know, you see marriage, and most people marry as the world see the marriage. It's a Christian-based thing, and if you have that background and that training, then you could possibly save your marriage or not walk out as fast as you would if you didn't have it.
Sounds good foundation.
I think that we could have invitations for different events that we're having here posted in our papers so that we can draw people from the outside. It's good to have verbal, but I think you can reach a broader base if you have advertisements in the paper for weekly things that you're having. And that's for both Mount Pisgah as well as Jones Chapel. I think it's something that will benefit the whole community.
In your opinion, how is love demonstrated in your religious life?
Love in my religious life is doing for others or doing whatever I can. When you say you love the Lord, you serve the people as you love the Lord. And to just do whatever is necessary and do it with a feeling of love. Not because you feel like I'm committed to do this, but I want to do this. This is something that's needed, and so you're happy to do it. That's showing love. Just being available as much as you can. Everybody knows when they're at a point that they are not physically able to do things, but to be available for many things that you're asked to do. That's being a servant of God, being able to do whatever they ask you to do, and to do it with an open heart and with love.
I'm sure your family felt your sacrifice to come and stay with your mother was a big sacrifice on your part. I know that that's been a blessing to her. How have you been blessed by that experience?
I've been blessed by the church, because that was my main concern leaving. I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and for me to give up my job and my church, because I've always been very active in church the time that I was going, for me to give up my church was kind of hard, and I prayed very hard about that, to send me or show me the church that I should go to, that I can work in. And I enjoy doing the work here, because I didn't think that when I came down here that this would be the church that I'd be in. I came at a time that there was controversy, and I am just so happy, and I enjoy working in the church and working with the people here. I can see it growing. My prayers are for them to continuously grow. And in the 3 years that I've been here, I can see it growing. And so my prayers have been answered as a blessing to the church. And I pray that God will bless me, that I can be a blessing to the church in whatever way that He sees fit for me to be.
Now, what would you like people to remember about Tibbee, or to know about Tibbee?
I would like for them to know that this is a loving community. From all the things that I've heard from my mom and her growing up, and how the community worked with one another. My grandmother used to make big gardens, and my mother was just saying last week, she said, my mother would make these great big gardens and have us chopping it And we would be mad because we wanted to go and play. And she said, we'd say, why you make this big old garden for us to chop? And she says, yes, I'm making this big garden, you're gonna chop it, and I'm gonna give all the food away. So it's a community that work together to help and take care of the people that weren't able. The ones that were able to do it, they did it and they gave it away as part of, I love you, I'm taking care of you. They were there for one another. And I think that if you go back and you look at African countries, communities, that was part of the village. You took care of one another. You provided for one another. You comforted one another. And that makes a stronger community that grows kids to adults that are with the same mindset, that we take care of each other, we provide for each other. And then you don't have to worry about the outside taking care of you, because you as a community, as a village, you're taking care of one another.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Collins?
I'd just like to say that I'm really happy. This was a difficult change for me to come here from the north, to come back to a place that's so slow paced for me. But it's a joy just to see all the things and all the opportunities that could be here in this neighborhood and in this town. It just takes people standing up and starting to say, we want this. This is what we want. We want it for ourselves. And going out and actually doing that, and not just saying it, but actually doing it, and forming committees and organizations that will really go out and work towards that.
All right. Well, certainly thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Cut.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All righty.
Thank you. And we'll definitely get back to you about your mother.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
All right, it's gonna be just kind of like informal. You go ahead, start with it.
All right. Can you state your name?
Donald Wesley.
And what's your length of time here in Tibbee?
Approximately 12 years. Approximately 12 years. Came here in 98. I believe it was the beginning of 98. And sort of been here ever since.
And what are some of your earliest memories of this church? What made you get involved in this church?
First come out here, my wife was already here at the time as a choir director. I sort of followed her out here and just saw the love of the people, and the community as a whole seemed to have some unity there. And so I just got interested here with the love that they showed me here at the church, and began to go to Bible class here, and really that's what drew me in. That's really what drew me in.
What can you tell me about your call to the ministry in general, and in particularly your becoming senior pastor here at Mount Pisgah?
Well, really through what God worked through me, Mount Pisgah really was the drawing factor in my call to the ministry, because God used this as a vehicle, an avenue to get me into the ministry. I came here and truthfully I wasn't living the way I should have been living, but through the wisdom of some of the people that was here at the time, and God allowed me to learn here under this ministry, He began to use that as a vehicle to draw me into the ministry. So my call to the ministry it was very vital through what Tibbee was doing at the time.
Now, how do you see the church today, and what's your grand vision for the church in, say, the next 2 to 3 years?
Amen. The church today is getting a lot stronger. It is a very vital church right now. Sometimes it may not look like it on the surface, but the foundation has been reestablished. And as far as the future vision of the church, God has some great plans here. As far as our being unified, as far as educating the public on who God is and getting Tibbee reestablished as the community that it's always been. Tibbee's always been a strong community.
What do you see as some keys to getting that message out?
The keys to getting that message out is getting the community educated on what God really wants us to do. I wouldn't say ancestors, but those who came before us had strong community values and strong work ethics, and there was love there. And we want to reestablish that with the younger generation now, who may not, because of circumstances, may not know the strong values. So educating them on the strengths that we can do as community and as family is very vital, so that we can get stronger. We want the youth to understand that the family values we need, our mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers already have those things in place. And if we can listen to our older generation, we can reestablish it with our younger generation. The only reason there seems to be a lack of respect really is because a lot of them just don't know. And so we want to educate them on those things so that they can make better decisions. A lot of decisions can't be made because they don't have the tools. And once we can teach them that the tools are present and that the tools are available, then they can make stronger decisions. And I believe Tibbee is in the perfect place, the perfect opportunity. Everything's here to be that kind of community that everyone else draws toward. And so we want to work on the educational aspects as far as not just the Word of God, but academics and all aspects of life. We got to be balanced, not just God, but balanced, so that we can understand those things.
Are there specific things that the church is doing today along those lines?
Yes, sir. Right now we're working in-house to strengthen the core from the inside. Teaching the ones that's coming regular to Bible class and Sunday school, teaching them the ethics they need, teaching them the values they need. There's some programs that I want to get started in the near future that we're going to be sitting down talking about as far as getting some academic things in place to help our youth. Some things that's always been here, but we want to take further advantage of those things.
Through your religious practice and method, how do you feel that community love is demonstrated?
Through the way we treat each other. There have been issues in the past where we sort of lost that focus, but now the last few years this community has really come back together and beginning to draw on those things. So some of the methods that we use is teaching them through the message that we give on Sundays and give on Wednesday nights, that there's a specific way that we have to treat each other, a specific way that we have to talk to each other and greet each other. The smallest things from a nice smile and handshake. Even some households have trouble. We want to reestablish those things. And if we can teach the basics that grandmother and grandfather taught us, then we can move forward from where we are.
What do you want people to know about Tibbee and in particular Mount Pisgah?
I want the world to know that Tibbee is an awesome place to come to. This is one of the very few communities, not saying anything bad about any other community, but this is one of the very few places where you can find everything you need. Brother Joe Bama said all the time, everything you need is in Tibbee. And that's a true statement. Whatever field of study, whatever technical field you can think of, there's a foundation somewhere here in Tibbee. And we want the world to know that God has set this place up just for everyone to succeed. But we have to take advantage of those things.
Now, in terms of the relationship that Mount Pisgah has with our sister church,
Yes.
John Chapel, how do you see that relationship growing and prospering?
That relationship is a strong relationship. And one of the messages that I would like to get is that relationship has been founded for years and years and years, and it's strong, it's established, and we can always continue to work together. We shouldn't hinder ourselves as for each other's ministries and growth of those ministries, because we'll always have a strong foundation as far as Mount Pisgah and as far as John's Chapel. But the unity there, we can always work together and accomplish common goals without hindering each other. So all we need to do is continue to work together in those, because we're family. we're really just one big family. So we just have to continue to work together and continue down that path.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh yes, I would love to add that I don't think this is by chance. I don't think this is an accident. I believe God has set all of this up, the interviews and the community structure, all of this up for the very purpose of us becoming just one big family. And as long as we keep that in perspective, man, I tell you, there's no limit to where this community can go. And I just thank God for what's going on, and I thank God for these interviews and for the work that's going on with these interviews, because this is going to be something that makes us cohesive as a group. And I just thank God for you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, man.
Amen.
All right, Corky. Good afternoon. Can you kindly state your name, sir?
My name is Joseph Graves.
How long have you been here in Tibbee?
All my life.
Expand on that a little bit in terms of what are some of your earliest memories?
Well, I was born and raised in this community, and I left it when I was 19 and stayed away, about 40 years. I come back when I was 58. And I've been back, I think, about 14 years.
What was it like growing up here in those 19 years?
Oh my God. It was, in my case, it was kind of rough, I tell you. You know, we didn't have much 60 or 70 years ago. But, you know, we had a lot of love in this community for each other. But as a whole, it was kind of rough. You know, we had to farm, and that's what we had to depend on for a living, you know. And we went to school 6 months out of the year, because I don't think we started school until about October, because we had to, you know, to gather the crops. And I think school was out around May. So we had to go back and farm and, you know, cultivate the land. So, you know, it wasn't so easy, but yet still that was all we knew.
How many siblings helped do that?
It was 5 of us, and I was the youngest of all.
How is religion in this community relevant, and how is it relevant then, and how is it relevant now?
Religion. Well, on a spiritual level, or just what we believe in?
Either, or both. You can talk about the spiritual first, and then what you believe second.
I don't know. We was, you know, taught to go to church, and as a matter of fact, we had to go to church every Sunday morning, and that's kind of difficult for me to explain. But we definitely had to go to church every Sunday. And we had the meeting over there on the fourth Sunday, only one Sunday a month, and over here they had the first Sunday. The first Sunday one Sunday a month. But we all united together. We'd come to this church, and everybody would go to that church on the fourth Sunday. So we all got along as one big family. And we also had the third church up there called New Hope. And it was on the third Sunday, and we'd all go up there. But we all worked it together and got along pretty good.
What are some of your earliest memories of growing up in the church? How you really felt in going to church?
Well, it was something, you know, we looked forward for, because that was all we had was to go to church. And it was, you know, kind of exciting, but it was okay.
On a spiritual level, did it influence you then, or was it an exercise in doing what you felt?
It was more or less, it was just more or less, I enjoyed it, because like I said, that was the only outlet we had. I never got hung up in the spiritual part of it, and they probably didn't even understand it. Because at that time, you know, we had to go what they call the Maurice Bank, to the revival. And it was 17 of us. And just before I got up, you know, talk about my religion, me and the guy next sitting beside us, we almost got to fight. You know, but I never forget this girl up here named Nellie Howe. She got up and all 17 of us got up behind her. But, you know, down through the years, with the experience that I've had in life and the things I've had to happen to me, I know man didn't bring me out of a lot of situations that I was in. God had to do it. So I definitely believe in God, you know, but.
The worship.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of where you felt God's power working in your life?
Say that again.
Can you give me an example, if you care to share, where you most felt God's power working in your life?
Well, I've had so many incidents to happen. But I was about, I would say about 30 years old, and I was working for a railroad company. And I was fixing a flat tire. And my boss always told me, this is one of the things that really stuck with me. And he said, always put 80 pounds air in these tires. And then I was working on a tire called split rim. Very dangerous, but I really thought I had that tire mounted good. So I got up, I checked the air in the tire, it was 78 pounds, and I raised up, I said, heck with it. And something said, do like your boss said. So I got the air gauge and went back down there to put the air in the tire, and I just said, heck with it, and before I could raise up, that tire blew up. It tore the bed off the truck. And when I raised up, I could see the rim going through the air. So that's just one incident I had, but I know it wasn't, I know God was in the plan, because I wouldn't have been in there to even talk about it. But I've had so many experiences where I know God brought me out of it. But that just one stuck with me.
Okay. What are some things that we can do today to grow the church and subsequently God's presence in how He works through us?
Well, you asked a kind of tough question, because I never really went to church. I never attended church too much, but I've always tried to do the right thing. Like I said, I've been back here about 14 years, and it seems like if you want to have a problem, now is join church and try to be active in church. It seems like ain't nothing but problems in the church. But I think what that is, we all want to be kind of in control. You know, I can't say we don't love each other, but I think we all just want our voice to be heard, and that's it.
And we bring that into the church.
Yeah.
In terms of the message and what you felt was special or feel was special about Tibbee, what's a good way that you see us getting that message to others?
I don't know. I don't know.
You talked about God's love, and you seem to feel it. How do you demonstrate that through your religious practice, not so much going to church, but in your companion? How do you express that love?
I try to be there for my fellow man if I can, and I try to do the right thing by him. And I think if we do that, then we pleasing God anyway. The only way you're going to please God is you're going to have to deal with human life. I think that's what it's all about. Showing love for my neighbors and my friends, and the young kids and the old, to be there for them. And I think if we do that, we'll be all right. Instead of going to church shouting and hollering, I don't too much believe in that. I ain't knocking it, but I just don't see that.
I think everybody should have a way of expressing themselves that's unique to them, whether that's
Exactly.
in something. What do you want people to know about your hometown, the place you grew up in?
Mr. Wicks, I don't know. It's not a bad place to live. It's a good place to live. That's why I stayed away 40 years and come back. Because I learned more since I've been back than I did before I was here. But it's a good place to stay and come back and retire.
In the brief time that we have left, can you talk a little bit about your time away from here when you left here at 19?
Left here at 19, I come back at 58. When I left at 19, I got a little job working where they repair engines. I think I worked there about 7, 8 years, and then I went into construction and stayed there for the rest of my time. And I stayed in Chicago. In Chicago, it's a good place to live. You know, you mind your own business, tend to your own business, and you'll be okay. And they got good people in these big cities. Even though, you know, the cities don't get the credit for it deserve, I don't think. Because you got bad people and good people everywhere. And a lot of it depends on who you are and the way you conduct yourself, who we are. You know, if you do good will follow you. If you get caught up in the wrong place, then you get screwed up.
So what brought you back?
Well, I've always wanted to come back, but I had 3 brothers there. I lost 2 of my brothers fairly young. And my older brother, he got sick at a young age. He come down with Alzheimer's. And I had to come back a little sooner than I had anticipated on because my dad had got old and I come back to really take care of him.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for your time. And this concludes our interview.
Okay. Yeah.
So how would y'all pay for this young man?
In little.
Watch out. You all right?
I get.
All right.
Yeah.
We so appreciate it. What's going on, Cut Move?
I got first take.
Yes.